Once upon a time, Prince Harry stood as the glowing symbol of compassion, courage, and He was the young man who carried the torch of his late mother, Princess Diana, who had carved her name into history as the people. In the aftermath of her tragic death, Harry was seen as the royal rebel who had inherited her heart, her empathy, her refusal to ignore Sentebale, the charity he co-founded with Prince Siso of Lesotho in 2006, was meant to be the crown jewel of that inheritance, a living testimony to Diana's fight for those the world forgot, vulnerable children ravaged by HIV, poverty. For years, Sentebale was Harry's safe haven, his platform to prove he was more than just a spare to the heir, more than just a party prince caught in Las Vegas scandal. Through Sentebale, Harry transformed into the hero of his own story. Cameras captured him cradling sick children, embracing HIV-positive teenagers, smiling with the very glow Diana once wore as she walked through minefields. Headlines called him Diana's son in the truest sense, and for a moment, the world believed he had finally found his death. But now, that carefully built legacy is crumbling before the eyes of a watching world, collapsing in a storm of mismanagement, controversy, and Prince Harry, once hailed as a beacon of hope, has become the central figure in a humiliating downfall. Sentebale, the charity that once defined his purpose, now defines his failure. The hero has become zero. The seeds of destruction were planted the moment Harry chose to redefine himself not as a prince of service, but as a prince of the melodrama severed his ties to the royal machine, but it also cut him off from the structures that once protected his charity. Donors, who once lined up to attach their names to Diana's son, began to back away when Harry's image shifted from selfless prince to Hollywood celeb. The Netflix deals, the podcast chatter, the California mansion, none of it fit with the raw authenticity that had made Sentebale. This was no longer the barefoot prince of Lesotho, but the polished, money-chasing figure of Montecito. Behind the scenes, funding dried up. Major gala events once headlined by Harry's presence turned into low-energy spectacles with dwindling attendance. Reports of disorganization, financial strains, and a lack of clear leadership began to leak into the very supporters who once praised Harry's devotion started whispering about had he abandoned the children for the cameras? Had he exchanged his mother's legacy for Netflix millions? The whispers grew louder until they became a roar. The public humiliation reached its peak when annual reports revealed that Sentebale's donations had plummeted. Where once millions flowed, now the coffers rattled almost empty. Critics tore into Harry with ferocity. A prince without a cause, one headline sneered. Another blasted, from Diana's hope to Diana. The imagery was brutal. Harry had failed not only as a royal, but as a son. He had taken the purest part of his mother's memory and let it rot in the Californian sun. To make matters worse, his brother William was quietly flourishing as the face of the Earthshot Prize, drawing applause and serious credibility for his global environmental. The contrast was damning. William, the heir, looked every bit the responsible future king. Harry, the spare, looked like a fallen celebrity clinging to Hollywood deals while his once precious charity collapsed into. The downfall of Sentebale became more than a financial disaster, it became a metaphor for Harry himself. Supporters who once called him a hero now questioned his every move. Former staff members, once loyal to his vision, spoke anonymously of chaos, of Harry's absence, of Meghan's influence pulling him away from the gritty reality of charity work into the glittering. What had once been about children and hope was now about cameras, contracts, and the endless drama of Harry's war against Diana's ghost loomed larger than ever. Every photo of her holding a child with AIDS was resurrected, contrasted mercilessly with Harry's images of polo matches, podcast studios, and Hollywood. It was as though the press and public alike were screaming, you were supposed to carry her fight. What happened? And Harry, for all his carefully rehearsed words about compassion, could not silence the perception that he had failed. His speeches at dwindling Sentebale galas rang hollow against the back. His statements about never forgetting the children sounded like echoes of a promise already broken. He was no longer the hero, he was the fallen prince who had betrayed the one legacy that the most shocking moment came when longtime patrons began to resign publicly, severing ties with Sentebale in statements that dripped with a few even hinted that Harry's focus was elsewhere, that his Hollywood ambitions had left no time for the gritty work of sustaining a charity. And this was the ultimate humiliation, not just failing privately, but being abandoned publicly, exposed as a man who had lost his way. And yet, Harry seemed unable, or unwilling, to confront the reality. He doubled down on his victim narrative, blaming the press, blaming the institution, blaming anyone but himself. But the optics were inescapable. Sentebale was in ruins. The children were still there, still waiting, but the prince who had promised to fight for them was gone. In his place stood a man unrecognizable, lost in the glitter of Montecito and the shadow of a brother who had become everything he could. From hero to zero, that was the story the world saw. A prince who once carried his mother's light, now drowning in his own darkness. A charity that once stood as a symbol of hope, now a casualty of ego, neglect, and ambition. And as Harry's image continues to unravel, one haunting question remains: was it all inevitable? Was Harry always destined to fall from grace, or did he simply choose the wrong path, abandoning his truest purpose for fleeting fame? Whatever the answer, the verdict in the court of public opinion has already been delivered. Harry's shocking Sentebale downfall is not just a story of a charity collapsing, it is the story of a prince stripped of his hero's crown, left with nothing but the bitter taste of betrayal. The hero is gone. The zero remains. And Diana's legacy, once entrusted to her son, hangs in the balance, perhaps lost forever in the ruins of a dream called Sentebale.